Max Verstappen moved back into the lead of the F1 Drivers' Championship on Sunday here in Barcelona by winning the Spanish Grand Prix, but it was not a very straightforward victory. He had a run into the gravel at one point, Charles Leclerc had his heartbreaking DNF, and Red Bull in the end used team orders to win the race for Verstappen. But would he have won the race without those team orders? And did Red Bull do the right thing? My name is Luke Smith, this is my colleague Matt Q, and this is Paddock Packdown. So the dust has settled on the Spanish Grand Prix. As you can see behind me, the paddock is packing up, as is the name of this show. And we're winding down from what has been quite a dramatic weekend here in Barcelona. The Spanish Grand Prix, not necessarily known for its excitement, but I think this weekend has been probably one of the more memorable ones. Red Bull and team orders, that is obviously the big talking point from today's race. It was that Red Bull asked Sergio Perez to let Max Verstappen through in the closing stages, in the final stint of the race. Very controversial decision. A lot of fans on social media, there was quite a lot of backlash about it. But there was a lot of good thinking behind it with what Red Bull were doing there. Just to give you a bit of a run through as to what happened in the race. Verstappen started ahead of Perez, but dropped back when he span into the gravel on lap 9. Perez was then asked to give Verstappen the place back so he could try and attack George Russell on lap 11. Verstappen couldn't get past Russell due to the DRS issue. They then pitted on the exact same lap, meaning that Verstappen was still stuck behind Russell as Perez was closing up behind both of them. Verstappen then pitted quite early for his second stop to take a set of soft tyres. That gave him the undercut on Russell, but meant he was converted to a 3-stop strategy versus the 2-stop that was planned for Perez. It then ended up in a situation where Verstappen was on a 3-stop strategy versus Perez on a 2-stop, and that meant that Perez was powerless really to keep Verstappen back, but Red Bull did say, if Verstappen is quicker, let him through. Perez said that's very unfair, but okay, he wanted some talks after the race about what had happened there. Matt, I mean, it's been probably the big talking point post-race here in Barcelona. A very simple question. Did Red Bull do the right thing by asking Perez to let Verstappen through?
Well, there's what is strategically the right thing, I suppose, a more nuanced question of what is morally the right thing. It's almost hard to argue no, because they've come away with a 1-2 result. But as you say, it's created quite a sense of backlash. I think our colleague was telling us 20 years and 2 weeks since Schumacher and Barrichello famously traded places and then had that really uncomfortable podium. We weren't quite that bad, and obviously Perez, after the checkered flag, said, well done, guys, but we need to talk about this later. And his stance had sort of mellowed on it. I think the argument I've been talking about to you, more on like the moral stances, we are really early into the season. Okay, Verstappen isn't miles clear in a championship lead. They are fighting for that, and Leclerc was so strong early in the race to suggest that Ferrari's upgrade could be pretty critical. So it's a case of taking the momentum, sort of running with it and building a points cushion when you can. But we race 5 and it's already getting political and stuff like that. Weren't we all shattered by the politics of last season? Let's just keep it a bit smoother, a bit more linear. There's no kidding ourselves about who's the number one driver in that team, and Red Bull sort of rubber stamped that and made it really clear what Perez's role is in that team.
Well, that's what I was going to point out. That, I mean, ultimately, isn't it kind of obvious who's going to be winning that championship, who's going to be fighting for the championship? Without Perez doing that, had Perez, say, won today's race with Max in second, Max wouldn't be leading the championship here. And I know it is only, race 5, race 6 of this season, but every race is worth the same number of points, apart from sprint race weekends, but let's not get into that. But it's, that, to me, doesn't really make any difference. That ultimately, we saw Leclerc build that massive lead early on. Even after 3 races at Imola, we were saying, should Ferrari put everything behind Leclerc? Isn't it kind of a similar thing here with Red Bull, or do you think that they've got to maybe play it a little bit longer and maybe a little less obvious in terms of who they are backing and give Perez basically a real shot while he's got the chances?
I mean, obviously the difference between them in a title race or even the form is not as stark as it is at Ferrari, where Sainz had another race in and wasn't playing that sort of de facto rear gunner role that Perez has actually assumed really well. We've gone years of Albon and Kvyat and Gasly being casualties of no one else being able to handle the car like Verstappen can. Well, this year it seems a lot closer. Although it is early in the season, I don't think you need to be dictating it. If you look at a bigger picture, you might say, the team order is favouring Verstappen. Maybe it's an apology almost for the unreliability they've had, the DRS problems that he had today. But also, it was Max's mistake that made him spin at turn 4. He got caught up by a tailwind, sort of backed his car and lost it. And there was a sort of section of the race that reminded me of, I think it was Monza 2011, where Hamilton was stuck behind Michael Schumacher for ages and couldn't overtake. McLaren swapped positions and Button got by immediately. It was a bit like that. So, Verstappen obviously hobbled by not having DRS to get past George Russell. And we've had sort of emphatic proof this weekend that as much as the cars are better at following each other, we can't get rid of the overtaking aid just yet. So Perez had a couple of bites to the chariot getting past Russell, but that was it. And we saw Verstappen without DRS was able to close much more rapidly. And I had a feeling that Perez might have made less of a meal of it, got ahead, and then does the race change at that point? What if actually Perez is then 5 seconds clear of Russell by the time Verstappen has his turn and successfully gets past? So lots of ifs and buts, but I can totally understand why Perez feels a bit grieved, not just in terms of like the sort of overarching status of number one driver and number two driver, but also like the microcosm of the race. It was still playing out in his favour, I felt, at that point.
Yeah, definitely. I think there is a real argument for Perez having a real chance to have won this race. And I think that realistically, had those been two drivers from rival teams, Verstappen had a 7-lap tyre delta over Perez. So realistically, I think that was only ever going to go one way. I think that was going to give Verstappen the chance to catch and pass him. But was there a way that Sergio Perez would have had a chance of winning this race? Would the 3-stop that Verstappen was on, the optimum strategy looked like, would that have given Checo the chance to get a win here in Spain?
Yeah, I think absolutely. We're talking about that battle with Russell, and that sort of obviously took on a whole load more significance as Leclerc retired. But before that, there was certainly a period where they could have, I felt, pitted Perez. But I suppose when Leclerc does retire, and then you've got sort of this Mercedes as maybe a bit of an unknown quantity as at the front of the race, I can understand why they did eventually split the strategies. But as we saw with Bottas was a great case in point, that on doing a 2-stop, bearing in mind actually that the prediction from I think Mercedes at the time, or even Ferrari, had been, we think Perez is on a 1-stop here, so they put it.
Which George Russell was the one who went blimey, like he was really surprised by it.
Yeah, and they obviously switched him to a 2-stop, as we saw with Bottas and a couple of others, really being on that medium tyre. You know, it was really leggy by then, a bit of a hiding to nothing. And again, that's why Perez lost a bit of time, and you know the 13-second gap at the end, I don't think that was really a case of, this is what Verstappen can do compared to Perez when he's a clean air. I think it was equally Perez going, tyres are knackered.
Yeah, so definitely a big day for Red Bull. And I think that debate about team orders, I think that's going to be something that will be picked up probably in the team debriefs and stuff. I think Checo, you were saying in the press conference, did sort of like climb down a little bit in terms of his sort of initial annoyance about it, which, I mean, rightfully so. But from a bigger picture point of view, I think for Red Bull today, this is Max's third win in a row. They've taken a 1-2 finish. They lead both championships now. Given how strong Ferrari looked a few weeks ago, given the lead that Leclerc had as well, the updates that Ferrari brought here to try and take the fight back to Red Bull, for Red Bull to have come away with a 1-2, that's a big statement. The balance of power, it's really shifted this weekend, hasn't it?
Yeah, but it's also shifted sort of session to session. Having followed it like throughout practice and qualifying, it's actually been really interesting. So you come here to Miami and Jeddah in particular, which have long straights and have suited the Ferrari's top end, and then Australia, which is a bit tighter, and suits Ferrari's acceleration. Leclerc absolutely dominated. And so you look at the run of calendars, you think, right, we've got Baku and Montreal in a few races' time, long straights, that's Red Bull territory. So Leclerc and Ferrari really need to hit the ground running at sort of shorter, lower speed, Spain and Monaco. And then we rock up here, Ferrari has upgrades, and Leclerc tops FP1, hunky-dory, and then FP2, we're doing a long run analysis, and Ferrari were just absolutely nowhere. Just thinking, are they going to really drop the ball at a track they need to win? And then we get to FP3, Ferrari focuses on its long run pace, which takes a step forward, and then that is combined with Red Bull focusing on its 1-lap pace. So there's this convergence, and then Leclerc gets pole at a track that's difficult to overtake. So there's been this momentum swing sort of from session to session. Well, I suppose we didn't really have a fair decider, because in the early phase of the race, obviously Max drops it, allows Leclerc to disappear, and then Leclerc has his reliability race. So we still don't quite have a clear answer, but we go to Monaco next. Ferrari, pre-update even, you'd have to say that's their territory. It's looking a little bit like they might need to win it, because there's a perverse sense to me that, okay, love the drama of it all and love how competitive it is, but I would like one weekend actually see where Verstappen, where he doesn't have a bad start, or Red Bull unreliability, where he just wins by like a minute, because I really think, as close and as exciting it's been, we're talking about Ferrari's best chance in 13 years to end this title drought. I actually think Red Bull are maybe a bit further ahead than any of us are giving them credit for at the minute. They just can't piece it together.
Yes, I think that's going to be probably the big talking point going to Monaco. Where does that balance of power lie? Can Ferrari end Red Bull's winning streak, or are the Red Bulls going to continue to pull away? And will we see any more team orders in use through the rest of the season? Matt, thank you very much for joining me, and we'll be back with the next Paddock Packdown from the Monaco Grand Prix next weekend.